So here at the International Human Rights Law Institute, would not come as a great surprise that we are big advocates of linking our university, DePaul University, to other universities around the world, and promoting the experience of students in traveling abroad and in getting involved in human rights projects abroad as much as possible. I personally think that every single student who has any interest at all in international issues should spend at least, I'd say, a month in their educational career as undergrads or as graduate students living somewhere in the developing world. I think it is crucial for making sense of the world that we live in. And I would highlight the importance of the developing world as opposed to, say, spending the time in London or Paris or Rome, which is also a great thing to do for other reasons. But so much of the world lives in conditions that are markedly different than what defines social reality in the United States. So much of the world lives in conditions of enormous poverty and lack, and so many places in the world, even a very brief tour to one of those places would be eye-opening for most Americans to just get a feel for how things look and how things feel. And to the degree a person has the opportunity when they're young and have limited, responsibilities and maybe a little bit more sense of adventure, to go out and go somewhere really different that actually, when I say really different, it's really different from the dominant social reality of the United States, but frankly more common as an element of what life is like for more people out there in the world. And interestingly, I wouldn't say that this is an experience that everyone should try to have because it's just good for them. I actually think that most people would find the experience of going and living, particularly in a pretty poor country, and particularly if they're able to live with families, they would find that it's not just useful in opening their eyes to the suffering of the world, but in fact surprisingly entertaining and fun and interesting. And I say this from personal experience. I'd never lived in the developing world until I received a grant after I graduated from my undergraduate to go and spend a year in Peru. And I ended up spending a lot of time in the shanty towns called pueblos jóvenes that surround Lima. There's just millions of people that live in them. And I can say that part of what made that experience so profound for me was not just that I got to become close friends with people who lacked the most basic things that I took for granted, like most people from this country, but actually I got a chance to participate in some of the best parties I'd ever been to. I had a chance to see the warmth and richness of all sorts of elements of life among people who lived in tiny little shacks made of cardboard and tin. And it's often a meaningful experience to go to the developing world and spend time with people who really don't have the things we have, not because it's so terrible, but just the opposite. In fact, you see that it's often quite fascinating and fun and interesting and exciting and ultimately just very human. And that is really what I think lies at the heart of the whole human rights movement and the drive for human rights. And here at a Human Rights Institute based at a university, I would say the primary goal that we have here is the primary educational goal we have here is to try to elevate our engagement with other people in a way that embraces some of the human rights vision, which is to say, understands all people as fundamentally equal, as all deserving of the same rights, and as so much more like us than it appears when you see them from a distance, say through a television screen or through some glossy article. In some ways, the worst way to know about people who live very different lives is to see some teary-eyed child looking up from a magazine, and to see just where the primary message that's sent is just how different and strange and exotic they are. So I would say that, here at a university, it's a privileged place to be able to do international work because we get to link real-world projects with academic investigation, with education and teaching, and we get to promote a sort of engagement and exchange as part of our work that is much more difficult to do in the world that is defined by commerce and profit.